Have you ever wondered about the other ship still sitting at the bottom of Pearl Harbor? Everyone knows about the Arizona. Very few people know about the Utah. And yet she's been down there just as long, in the same harbor, with her dead still inside her, and nobody has ever moved her. If you're watching this video, you may already know she was there on December the 7th, 1941. But if you're unfamiliar, the USS Utah was an old American battleship that had been converted into a target ship by the time of the attack. 2 Japanese torpedoes hit her in the opening minutes of the raid. She capsized in under 12 minutes. 58 men died aboard her. 54 of them are still inside. What I want to know is why she's still there. Because the strange thing about the Utah is that she almost wasn't. She's the only ship at Pearl Harbor where the Navy tried to raise her, failed, and then just left her. The answer involves a ship that nobody thought was worth the effort of salvaging, a righting operation that went badly wrong in 1944, and a decision made in 1956 that sealed her fate for good. And the story also involves a tiny copper urn inside her hull that very few people ever knew about until 2003. The Utah was commissioned in August 1911. She was a Florida-class dreadnought, 521 feet long, displacing just under 22,000 tons. She carried 10 12-inch guns when she was built. By the standards of 1911, she was a frontline battleship. By the standards of 1941, she was 30 years old and completely obsolete. In 1931, under the terms of the London Naval Treaty, she was demilitarized. Her main guns were removed. Her decks were covered in thick wooden timbers to protect her from the practice bombs that would be dropped on her during exercises. She became a radio-controlled target ship, her entire purpose to let other American ships and aircraft practice attacking her. On the morning of December the 7th, 1941, the Utah was moored off the northwest side of Ford Island, in a berth that was normally used by aircraft carriers. That detail matters. The Japanese torpedo bomber crews coming in over the island that morning had been briefed to look for aircraft carriers. When they saw a large ship in the carrier berth with a wooden-covered deck that from the air could easily be mistaken for a flight deck, they attacked. 2 torpedoes hit her almost immediately, on her port side. Both punched clean through her thin, obsolete armor. Water flooded in faster than her pumps could handle. She began to list heavily within minutes. Her captain gave the order to abandon ship at 8:10. By 8:12, she had rolled over onto her port side. 461 men managed to scramble clear. 58 did not. What happened next is the part most people never hear about. One of the men trapped inside the Utah was Chief Water Tender Peter Tomich. He had stayed below to vent the boilers and make sure his men got out. He was still at his post when she capsized. He was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, and down the passageway from where he died in Chief Yeoman Albert Wagner's quarters, there was a small copper urn. I'll come back to that. Now. After the attack, the Navy had to decide what to do with every damaged ship in the harbor. The Arizona was beyond repair. The Oklahoma had capsized like the Utah and was going to be righted. The California, the West Virginia, the Nevada and the others were all scheduled for salvage and return to service. The Utah was a problem nobody wanted to think about. This is the bit that got me. She wasn't a warship anymore. She had no main guns. She had no combat value. Even if the Navy could raise her, there was nothing to put her back into. The assessment from the beginning was that salvaging the Utah was a waste of resources that were urgently needed to refloat the actual battleships on the other side of Ford Island. So for most of 1942 and 1943, while the rest of the harbor was being systematically cleared, the Utah was simply left alone. But she was in the way. Her upturned hull was partially blocking a berth that the Navy needed. So in late 1943, a limited salvage plan was drawn up. The Navy was not going to refloat her. They were just going to roll her partially upright and drag her closer to Ford Island, out of the shipping channel. The same winch and cable system that had been used to roll the Oklahoma upright was installed on the Utah. The operation began in February 1944. It did not go well. When the winches began to pull, the Utah didn't roll. She slid. The mud of Pearl Harbor had gripped her hull, and instead of rotating her back to vertical, the winches simply dragged her across the harbor floor. As she moved, she sank deeper into the mud. The operation managed to pull her closer to Ford Island, but it got her only as far as 38 degrees off vertical. It had been hoped to roll her to at least 70. At 38 degrees, the ship refused to move any further. The winches were pulling her deeper into the mud rather than lifting her upright. On March the 13th, 1944, the Navy gave up. The Utah was left where she was, partially rolled, her starboard side still visible above water, her port side buried in the harbor floor. All diving on the wreck ceased 2 days later, and that is essentially the position she is in today. For the next 12 years, nothing happened. The Utah just sat there, rusting, half visible from the harbor. In 1956, the Navy briefly considered removing her one more time. The idea was rejected. Too expensive, too difficult. And by then, the feeling about what was inside her had shifted. The 54 men still entombed in the hull were not coming out. That same year, the Navy formally declared the Utah a permanent war grave. So why has she never been moved? There are 3 reasons. The first is that there's no reason to. The Utah is not in a busy part of the harbor. Her final resting position after the failed 1944 salvage is tucked up against the northwest shore of Ford Island, out of the shipping channels, out of the way. Unlike the Oklahoma, which had to be moved because she was blocking traffic, the Utah is in a location where she can just be left alone indefinitely. And she has been. The second is what's inside her. 54 of the 58 men killed aboard the Utah are still in the wreck. Most were trapped below decks when she capsized. Their bodies could not be reached in 1941, could not be reached during the failed salvage of 1944, and cannot be reached now. Disturbing the hull means disturbing them. The Navy has declined to do that for nearly 70 years. And this is the interesting part. When survivors of the attack died in later years, many of them asked to have their ashes placed inside the Utah with their shipmates. As of 2024, 17 former crewmen who had been aboard her on December the 7th, 1941, have been interred in the wreck after their own deaths. That practice continues. It is, by number of modern interments, the most active war grave in Pearl Harbor. The third is the copper urn. In 2003, a woman named Mary Wagner Cry came forward with a story she had kept secret for 62 years. Her father, Chief Yeoman Albert Wagner, had been aboard the Utah as a survivor of the attack. Years earlier, in 1937, his infant daughter Nancy had died at birth in the Philippines. Wagner had her ashes cremated and kept the copper urn with his belongings aboard the ship. Divers tried to retrieve it after the sinking and couldn't reach the quarters where it had been. It was still inside. It had been there the whole time. The Utah, as it turns out, is also the final resting place of a baby girl who had never lived to see America. A small memorial was erected near the wreck in 1972. It's on Ford Island, which means access is restricted, which means most of the 2 million people who visit Pearl Harbor every year never see it. The Utah gets a fraction of a percent of the visitors the Arizona does. Most people who go to Pearl Harbor leave without ever knowing she's there. So, the Utah is still there because she wasn't worth salvaging in 1942, because the righting operation in 1944 failed and left her stuck in the mud, because nobody has ever felt the need to disturb her since, and because her dead, including a baby girl who never had a chance to live, are still inside her. The oldest American battleship still afloat on the morning of December the 7th, 1941, demilitarized before the war began, mistaken for a carrier and attacked by accident, sunk in 12 minutes, failed in salvage, forgotten by most visitors. She has been lying there on her port side, half visible above the water, since 1944. Nobody came back for her. Nobody's coming back for her. Now, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please let me know in the comments and I'll make more of these for more ships. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss those, and I'll see you next time.